Yay Networks.
Hi, Wild Ones. Welcome back to the Wild Rose podcast. I'm Whitney Rose.
And I'm Connie Daniels. All right, everyone, we have a really special guest for you today. I'm so excited to introduce our friend, Nicole Huntsman. She is not only absolutely stunning, if you're watching this on YouTube, but she is one of I would say she's the smartest, most intuitive astrologist I think that I've ever talked to be honest.
How many have you talked to?
I actually only a couple, probably like 3, but like not a lot.
Astrologers are great. Yeah, it's a unique breed.
It is. And so I'm so excited to introduce her to all of our listeners today and to share with all of you, no matter what your belief is on astrology. Some of you, maybe you don't even believe in it. And some of you know lots about it. So we're going to kind of dive in to her little brain here and pick it and get some information about some of the basics of astrology. And we'll go into a little bit more detail than just basics, but welcome.
I think it's like interesting though, because even if people are into astrology per se or don't study it, everyone knows their zodiac sign.
Sure.
Yeah.
Your sun
so
sign.
Yeah, their sun sign. Because there's she's gonna give us, what would you say, like the
I'll give you a primer, a little primer, Astrological 101.
Yes.
This is going to be like we all decided to take an elective course today. 1 day of class, and it's going to be all about astrology.
It's going to be the best class of your life.
That's right. We'll teach you the 4 pillars. It's the basics. People know their sun sign, right? You guys talked about the 3. Mm-hmm. Right, the big 3.
That's what my daughter says. It's the big 3. What are the big 3?
And that's a big thing. Like with Pattern, that app Pattern, which is a really great app, and different apps and websites, they'll use the big 3 because it makes it easy. Like you do need your birth time to know your ascendant, to know your moon degree. So you only know your sun sign without your birth time.
Okay. But we got back up.
We got it.
Yeah.
Some people don't have birth time.
Yeah. So how did you get into astrology? And then let's talk about where's the best way to start? The 4 pillars.
I'm like, let's just get right in there. And you're like, let's do a little intro.
We're both clients. We've both had readings from her. So so I think we're a little more familiar, but people could probably get lost in all of this. Yeah. So
Wait, I'm going to back up even a tiny bit more because like Whitney just said, we both had readings from her. And what I noticed in my reading, what I didn't realize about astrology, I know my sun sign and it's like kind of lines up sometimes, kind of doesn't, because that's just one little portion of who I am. And I am an Aquarius. Yeah. She remembers. Yeah. But what I found fascinating about my reading with you is as you get deeper into it, it felt like I was getting a psychic reading.
Yeah.
It felt like because you and I had just barely met, you didn't know anything about me, but she was giving me a reading about where all my houses line up and all the things. But anyway, that's what made me draw into astrology even more is that I didn't realize that you could literally read.
You can see everything.
Anything.
You can see everything. So an astrology chart, I see it as a poem or a novel, let's say, or a piece of art. So you could have one person who reads this poem with a certain cadence, with certain rhythm, right? And they would notice certain things. And another person will read it totally different. They're still saying the same words. It's the same, but it's the artistry underneath. And when I'm reading a chart, when I'm in flow, yes, impressions come through, very strong impressions. And they'll come through as, I believe in reincarnation perhaps, or transmigration of the soul. Somehow our intelligence is more than just like in our bodies, right? And so I'll see things and I just, even if it's kind of a metaphor for people, I was reading for someone recently and I saw a man and his son, like these 2 warriors standing on a hill of a mountain, looking over their territory. And I'm reading this to my friend and who happens to have Danish ancestry, come to find out his great grandfather or whatever was a chieftain and this entire town is named after his family. Oh, wow. So stuff like that comes through and I just like let it come through. And it doesn't always. Some days I'm just like, I don't know. Just like a clodhopper plodding through a chart. Like, I don't know what I'm not seeing.
So you think, what is that? Like a little like clairvoyant, right?
Sure.
That comes through that sort of a gift that you have that goes along with the astrology readings that you do.
Absolutely. And I think this last couple of years, just being by myself out in nature and being with God, I just walk around and kick rocks, talk to God up on that hill where people do the paragliding. And it got me quieter inside in a sense, even though I was being bombarded with stuff from the outside. And I was able to just see things. So that gift kind of developed even more this last few years, I would say, from that hermitage.
So people who don't know you don't know that you actually sold everything, lived in an RV for how long?
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
And just stolen.
Yeah.
And I joked it went up in the rapture. It was like, it was the rapture. But then we got it back. So. Yeah.
So you did live one with nature. You were out there and you were able to quiet
under the stars every night.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. And watching the rhythm and the speed of nature too actually helped my astrology readings. Nature is quite slow, but constant. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times in my readings, like you've got limited time, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying to hurry and get through it. And I realized actually slowing down is actually better, right? With everything in life, like slowing down and enjoying the chart and like not having to.
So should I just miss my appointment after this?
Yeah. Just slow right down. We'll be here.
If it didn't have something to do with Wild Rose Beauty.
I know. I'm like, you're meeting with a designer or something. That sounds fun.
Yeah. No, graphic.
I want to go
for
with you.
bags.
I don't care.
It's not even a big deal. Yeah. But okay, so how did you get into astrology? Before we dive into like the 4 pillars of it, how did you how did this happen?
So my parents, I always tell this story because I just love it. And my dad actually recently retold it to me. So back in the 70s, my mom and dad, my mother lived in Oregon. My dad was in Arizona. And my dad drove a flower truck and he would drive it up to Oregon, get the flowers at the nursery, bring them back to Arizona. Okay. They meet each other. My mom's a little flirt, a little coquette. And they start a little romance. And on New Year's, 1977, they conceived me. I was born in September, 9 months later. And so my parents, my mother, before she'd been married before and lived in a commune, and we had a lot of books in our house. And there was that sort of ethos of the hippie, my dad loves philosophy and history and all these things. So we just had astrology books around. We had Linda Goodman's Sun Signs, which is a great, wonderful book. It's like a classic. And so I started out just with pop astrology, sort of learning the symbols, learning the signs. And astrology itself it's a language. So your planets are like verbs, your signs are like adverbs or adjectives. And so on and so forth. And once I learned the language and then could kind of like what you're talking about, Connie, look at a chart and read between the lines, see things that are not in the chart per se, but that the chart's sort of telling you, like this particular configuration could lead to this kind of situation or personality type or blah, blah, blah. Astrology is something that can be used for anything, not just people, businesses, governments. I use it all the time. We're not going to talk politics, but let me tell you, like the stuff I know just from studying astrology charts. So you can study anyone, you can study anything. It's about the birth of something, its life cycle, and its death.
Oh my God, I have to book a reading for Wild Rose Beauty.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite readings are for businesses. Like there's an in-person, it's personal because it's yours, but it's a business, so we can kind of mess around with it. And
yeah, because mine has had multiple lives. It has a past life and it was reborn.
I love it.
Yeah. And now it's on a path and we need to know this life. This life cycle.
And we'll look at your things too. So like, not to get into too many technical details, but of course, astrology, we can look at someone's birth chart just to get to know who this person is, but you can also progress that chart. You can look at transits. You can do things with forecasting where it kind of comes alive and it flushes out. So we can look at you and your business, your progressions, your businesses. Even.
Yeah. I would love to do a follow-up on the reading we did that one night at Connie's.
That was so fun.
Yeah.
And that was
I recorded it.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, good. It was such a mini reading, because there were so many people that wanted to have their charts looked at. I couldn't really go. I rather work with one person all night and go deep than do like a bunch of little.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because I talk to you and look at your chart. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is so intriguing. And then some other person comes in. But
yeah. Okay. So I'm going to keep us on track because we all love to. We could talk about anything.
And we can squirrel all over the place.
We
can edit all this out. This is me.
No, it's so fascinating. So you just learned the language. How did you decide? So what was next? How did you decide you wanted to start reading charts? Like, what does that look like?
Back, this is junior high school, right?
Okay.
I start liking boys. And this astrology thing, I'm like, ooh, I can figure out kind of this person's personality that I have a crush on without knowing them or talking to them. So it started out kind of like that, like it does for a lot of us. It's just fun for relationships, right? And then initially I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a chart, like with all the planets. And I didn't even know when I first started looking at just sun sign astrology, I had no idea about the planets or about any of it. It was just dipping my toe in the waters of just the signs themselves. So now do we want to talk about the 4 pillars?
Yeah.
Because I can.
Yeah, because I think generally people, like I said, probably just know their sun sign. They may have heard that they have the big 3, like the rising and then their moon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's talk about the pillars because I think it'll help people understand what we're talking about.
What are pillars exactly?
So pillars is just kind of another way of saying, I don't know, this is the 4 building blocks, the elemental. It's like with language, you've got subject, object, right? You have your nouns, you've got your verbs, your adjectives, your adverbs, all that stuff, so on and so forth. So with astrology, your 4 pillars, first of all, you have your signs. So anyone who's just learning about astrology, really get to know all 12 signs and their archetypes. So like Aries is our first sign and Pisces is the last sign. Okay. So Aries has to do with, in a life cycle of anything, the birth of something. And any Aries that they tend to be go-getters. Do you know Heidi? Hi, Heidi, if you're listening to this. But Heidi, a friend of mine, she's Aries, and she's like a go-getter. She's very active, always doing things. And if you think of Pisces on the other end, it's a bit more about it's like the opposite, right? It's things returning back to start over again. So there's a softness to Pisces, or it's not as active, it operates in a different way. So with our 4 pillars, starting first with your signs, the signs apply to, there's the 12 signs, of course. Yeah. And all of them have opposites, right? It's like 6 signs, and they all have their opposite. So opposites are really important in astrology. It's everything coming together, because without opposites, nothing. It's creating a definition of some kind, right?
Like you can't have light without darkness.
Bingo. Exactly.
Right.
It's very hermetic, and these just sort of these ideas that came about from even pre-Renaissance, but these early philosophical ideas about existence. So with your signs, your 12 signs, I say anyone who's learning astrology, learn the 12 signs really well and understand them archetypally and think about them in order from birth, Aries, then to Taurus. So like in the Native American calendar, they have, I can't remember the name of it, but for the Aries month, it's something like I forget the name, it's some active, I forget the word, but the next month for Taurus, it's the flowering month, right? So you think about what is happening that time of year in the Northern Hemisphere, where astrology was, kind of created. What's happening in May and June? And then you can kind of start to think, it's that time of year where you're planting everything and you need to water everything and take care of it. People who are strongly Taurus, tend to have good control over their environment. They tend to be consistent. They tend to be just kind of like, I don't know, if you want to grow and harvest something, you got to put the work in the beginning, right? And so Tauruses tend to be good with their resources and kind of controlling the resources, getting those seeds in the ground, keeping that covered up with dirt, keeping it watered. And then so you go through, and then you go to Gemini. I don't know if we want to talk about all the signs. I could kind of
briefly touch. Yeah, I love it. It's fascinating.
Fun? Okay. So then with our Gemini, that archetype, and remember, this isn't just, I'm talking about the seasons, which applies to our solar cycle.
Yeah.
But this is also the clothing, so to speak, that the other planets will wear, because they'll be in the heavens, in the sky, right next to the sun. So like Venus, for example, is always quite close to the sun. She's always like the degree in the sign before, the same sign, or the sign after. And Venus is how a person behaves. It's their social affectation. It's how they've been taught to treat other people, or it's what they value,
So is that the second pillar is planet?
So seconds are planets. Thank you. You totally kept me. She's keeping me on track. So yes, planets are second.
That's my job.
Yeah, you're so good. You got it. I actually use a couple of asteroids.
But wait, go back because
to the signs.
Yeah,
were we going to go through this 12
No,
signs?
no, you don't have to go through all 12. But I just like the seasonal aspect. So you have the watering, the planting.
Let's do the dichotomy.
Because we're Libras.
Yes, I know.
So like, what's that? What's going on?
So Libra,
if Aries is the first sign, that's spring.
And Libras are opposite. And Aries is our opposite.
Opposite. We're in Connie. So Connie's after us.
Aries, yeah. So I love it. We've seen a Gemini and we have like a little triangle.
We have Gemini moon.
We have Gemini moons.
Oh, well, there we go. That's right. You do in the fourth house. That's right.
Yeah.
So many. We found out through
all
Nicole
your
in our
friends,
readings.
so many moon and Gemini.
Yeah. Our moon signs
So
have
many.
come together in friendship.
Okay, so I'm just trying to keep track. So you have the first pillar is the sign, and the second is the planet.
And it's just, this is like if you're going to elementary school and just learning it. Like
What's the third?
The third is going to be your houses.
Houses, and what's the fourth?
Your aspects.
Okay.
So
now we have those
geometric
established. I think it'll be easier to follow when you start talking about
Totally.
Yeah.
And really, honestly, for people who are just beginners at astrology, you could just look at your big three, right?
Mhm.
Your sun sign gives you a feel for that's just a person's general ego, their personality in general. Their moon sign, though, will give you those deeper kind of drivers, but really what is this person really like at home? When they're by themselves, what's their comfort zone?
That's the moon sign.
That's your moon sign. And so having Gemini moons, conversation is important. Many times, though, Gemini moon, we came from a childhood where the relationship with the mom could have been tricky, or there was almost a sibling rivalry, weird thing that can kind of sometimes happen with the mother. It's very weird. I've noticed that, especially with female Gemini moons. So knowing this about
resonates with me.
Yes. So knowing it about someone, though, I feel I'm truly, we are Libras, you're an Aquarius. All three are people. Like, I love people, and I really like to understand people. And I don't want to put on top of someone a label and be like, oh, you're this. This is what I don't like about astrology. Things on social media, they're like, oh, Gemini's, blah. That's just stupid. It's stupid. It's dumb. The whole point is to understand people on a deeper level. And so with your planets, then you start with the sun. Everyone knows the sun. That's the day you were born. If we were to make a chart, it just simply shows the sun. We use a geocentric chart. We put the Earth in the center because,
center of the,
who cares, right? Hey, Kepler, whatever. So but the Earth in the center is geocentric because everything has to do with you. You're the center of the universe. Right?
Yeah.
When a baby's born, that's the center of the universe. That's what I want to know about. So
is this why it's
so recognize that we know astronomy. We understand astronomically that the Earth is not in the center of the chart, but then all the planets are on the outside.
But is this why you say our sun sign is sort of our ego, and that is we are the center.
Yes.
Our ego is the center. So
that's beautiful,
right?
Connie. Oh my gosh,
So,
I got this.
I just
I'm gonna maybe steal that. Put it in my book.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's so great and perfect. It's funny when you do something so long and you study it in such depth, like the simple, obvious truths that I forget sometimes.
For sure.
I'm like, oh yeah, it's the center.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Okay. So the center.
Your moon. So your moon is the next, and the moon is very quick moving, right? In our sky, it's closest to us. So the moon moves every day. In about 2.5 days, it changes signs even. So it's in a sign for just a couple days. So if your baby's born on a Monday instead of a Friday, it's like a totally different moon sign. And every 29-ish days, about 30 days, the moon makes its revolution. So the point is, not only is your moon sign important, but also the relationship between the moon and the sun, because they have a lunar phase of some kind, right? It's like I was born on a full moon or an eclipse. You were born, you're Libra, so you've got a trine to yours, and you've got a little sextile. Or no, you've got a trine too, because you're Gemini, right? So both of you.
I know that I was born.
The moon was like moving away for you, and the moon for you, because you have Gemini moon. Do you have Gemini? Yeah.
Gemini moon. I remember you told me this. I can't remember specifically.
What was it about?
Because this is why it's important to even know your birth time, right?
Yeah, for the moon. Because was your moon cuspy? Was it right between two signs or
something? Mine, you told me that when I told you my birth time, you go, ooh, it was 2:39 a.m.
Okay. I don't remember why. It must have been something I was looking at.
Wait, just tell people why. Because isn't this what she tapped into?
It's
your question that you want to go back to?
I didn't even notice that.
No, because that's like 3 a.m. is like the witching hour.
Yeah, I was born 3:53.
And it's so we started talking about that.
Oh, yeah. That's
and
right.
then
That's right. The witching hour.
My Gemini moon was, we lined it up. Because we were talking about how I left the Mormon Church. We were talking about that.
This is important because we need to talk about in your chart some stuff that lines up. You have the same nodes at the Mormon Church. Destiny.
So you told me that I was 1 degree off from the birth of the church.
Okay, so that's your birth.
So when Joseph Smith founded the church, I was like 1 degree off.
And it wasn't your sun sign, but it was
my moon sign.
Was it your moon?
And it has a lot. No, it was something in a different house.
Probably
over
your nodes or something.
All I remember is you were pointing up here and you were talking about down here, and you were freaking out because you were like, you came here to defy the patriarchy and your sexuality
I remember this.
And we talked about my sexuality and how I express it.
Yeah.
And I came here to like, my purpose is to like break it down. And after that, at that point in time, I didn't even know what kind of trauma I was facing yet. I knew there was some there, obviously, but like, I want to go back. I have it on a voice memo. We should go back and listen to it at some point.
Let's do it. Let's redo it even.
Yeah.
Like I think astrology readings are always fresh. It's just like reading a poem. Like read it
but
new every time.
I am just now in this moment connecting that dot.
Yeah.
That's cool.
You're right. When we did these readings, this was a couple years ago. So this is
They were
before
fast.
Whitney.
It was when I first got the RV. Yeah. So
Yeah.
It was 2 years ago. Yeah.
It was a couple years ago before you had tapped into any of your trauma and things that you are now healing from.
It was before I started facing it.
Yeah.
Did you start? That like makes me really excited to know that if anything with my job, it's really cool to get to, first of all, be allowed into people's private, personal, their psyche. But then secondly, to help them like recognize that it's okay. You're going through this for a reason, and this is why.
I actually remember you telling me, you're like, "This is so exciting!" Like we were freaking out about it. We were excited about it. But then you were like, "But you're gonna have 2 really hard years."
Yeah.
And at that time, I had just become a housewife. I'm like, duh.
Yeah.
But I had no idea the connection of what we were talking about, in my chart.
Neither do I. That's the thing. That's
and
crazy.
It was because what was hard was nothing to do with my businesses, the show. It was my personal trauma.
Hard could have meant a lot of things, right?
A lot of things. Yeah. Everyone goes through a hard 2 years every 2 years. Every year is hard.
Well, also, it's not right. I don't think it's astrology's job or an astrologer's job to sit here and tell you by line item, like, this is I'm going to itemize. This is what's going to happen for you this next year, right? It's more like,
and I didn't interpret it like that at all.
Yeah, totally. I don't read that way because I
just thought it was cool that I was like, that makes so much sense internally inside of me, the way that I feel about the church and the way that I feel about how I want to express my sexuality. It just made sense to me in the moment.
Resonated.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay. But now
you've got your nodes. I looked at your chart last night. I looked at you guys' charts just like really quick, and your nodes too, same nodes. Your nodes of the moon have to do with your destiny. It has to do with kind of
what's a node?
Yeah, what is a
node?
node?
The node of the moon. So this isn't a planet, it's an abstract. It's just a point. It has to do with the movement of the moon and the sun.
Okay.
We won't go into all the explanation of what it is, but astrologers who study evolutionary astrology, who believe in like this idea that our intelligence perhaps was here before in a different body or whatever. Like maybe that's what we just are. We're just all one thing anyway. So we have these eyes and we can kind of come in as intelligence and experience. I experienced Nichole and you're experiencing Connie, you're experiencing Whitney. It's like, so the point is with astrology, your nodes kind of will show where you came from and where you're going. Oh, cool. So on a deeper soul level. And if you don't believe in reincarnation, that's fine. You can go childhood or before, the past, what's happened in my life, what's this person had to deal with that they know this really well. And then your north node has a bit more to do with where am I going? I'm not there yet, so I don't have that quite figured out, And so you have the same nodes. Your north node, you're sort of, it's a destiny point. It's something to kind of meditate upon as in Virgo. It's the same as the LDS Church. It's literally, I think, the same degrees as the LDS Church's north node, and also the same degree as the current president and prophet of the LDS Church. His son is on the LDS Church's north node right now. So his calling and his job as the doctor, heart surgeon, is needed right now. And I personally am pretty a-religious. I'm like, I was a convert to the Mormon Church, but I'm like open to all of it. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think all the religions are here for a reason. I've spent a lot of time while I was in the RV reading the Bible and the Quran, and I read the I Ching, along with a lot of different religious books, because I really want to understand, what do people believe about these things? And also the symbols are the same in all these different, right?
Yeah.
So I'm an art history major. I love iconography and symbols. So with the LDS Church, I was a member, I still am, like technically, I haven't been to church in forever. And I have nothing but hope for the people that are truly trying to do good things and truly believe what they believe. That's cool. I feel like I am an American. My family helped found this country, like some really cool historical ancestors. So I very much believe in the freedom of religion. It's very important. So I'm all about go Mormons, go do your thing. Because also the Mormons are doing things that other people are not doing at all. You have highly educated, relatively, people that are LDS tend to be well-to-do, there's plenty of poor people, but you know what I'm saying? Middle-class people who have an adherence to their religion that is unlike any other faith. Like Mormons are one of the most difficult groups of people to get to pull away from their religion, right? Because the indoctrination and all that.
Yeah.
But at the
Fascinating.
same time, they're being taught really important things that have to do with family. That is missing. These things, marriage and family, these things are missing in the world right now. So
They are.
anyway, my point is with you, because this is important, bringing this back full circle. Sexuality is how we all get here. And right now, all of these questions of gender and male-femaleness and all this, these aren't new. These questions have been around for forever, right? They're just in the news. And astrology very much deals with these ideas of male-female as this gender, sort of as a concept, a construct. And but I find it's fascinating with your two stories. Do you guys have similar? Were your parents divorced? Did you guys grow up Mormon or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we both grew up Mormon, and both of our parents got divorced.
Okay, it's just good to know. And you grew up in Utah?
Yep, both grew up in Utah.
Okay, cool. So you guys, I think, do have a unique platform and not to talk about Mormon Church and all that or whatever, but with astrology is quite simply just another way of looking at existence, right? It's just saying that there is something about this grand clock in our sky that tells us what time it is, that holds mysteries, that quite literally, understanding time and working with time, you can kind of even, I wouldn't want to go so far as to say control and manipulate it, but you can. Like astrology does get into some pretty powerful territory. And as an astrological consultant, if I'm reading for someone, like you can really help someone, you can really hurt someone. I've heard some people say some crazy things to clients, that were so fatalistic, like this is going to happen, and blah, blah, blah. And it's a power trip for the reader, right?
Yeah.
It's not about the client, like helping them.
Right.
So anyhow, total.
That's good to know, though.
I'm on
that's good to know.
Well, no, I think
journeying far and wide away from our four pillars. But
but we've talked about that on a previous podcast. Like, how do you discern between the deceivers and the gifted?
Sure. I think that's just honestly when someone is just so adamant with anytime anyone's hyperbolic with me, they're like, this is what it is, or then that turns me off immediately. Yeah. That's how you know. Someone who is a good reader is someone who's also open to being wrong. They're open to like working with their client, teaching their client, because there's always things you're learning. It's as though I look at your chart. I have never seen it. I'm reading, as I said, it's a brand new poem. I have never read this ode before, right? I'm just reading it, and the rhythm of it, some people's charts are really hard for me to read. I've had clients before where I'm like, I don't even know what to do with this. I don't even know. Yeah.
That surprises me because I felt like you're
I'll pull their chart. This is so cool. I'll pull their chart with my chart and I'll be like, it's a bunch of Neptune stuff. And it's quite literally our charts, like us as two people just interact in a way where it's harder for me to read this person's chart, let alone this actual person. And then with those same clients, there'll be ones that I'll have communication issues with, like something will get lost in the email or it's bizarre, I've had a few clients too where I'm like, I cannot do this reading right now. I just can't do it. Something about it didn't feel right. I had some people who were ordering readings that were not for real people, ordering readings that were, there was stuff on the dark web. I had someone take my likeness and create a Cash App account with a Photoshop picture of me with my kitten that I had in the RV with a totally different outfit on, with my hair all down and curled and cute and hot, like as though I ever could do that in the RV. You know what I'm saying? And they were using it on a Cash App to take money from people. So this stuff's out there. Yeah. This is just from having YouTube, and a lot of other stuff has happened in my life, which is why I kind of also pulled back, but not to get off on a different subject, but
gosh, that is crazy. I mean,
astrology is a powerful thing and people get freaked out by it. During all the QAnon stuff, there were a bunch of conspiracy theory type people who were kind of Christians and extremists. I had a couple different men message me death threats, message me horrible things, telling me I was a narcissist, like I was a horrible person, just bad stuff. And I'm like, I'm just trying to read the stars and help people.
Wow. People take it in all different directions.
Yes. And here in Utah too, I think just with the religion, people just don't understand what astrology is. And I'm kind of going, the Mormons, if anything, they're going to like astrology because it's all about the things that the symbols on the temple.
That's what I was going to say. Aren't there symbols on the temple?
It's like Mace,
that are astrology.
Freemason. That's all signs and symbols.
One of the reasons I joined the Mormon Church is because they believed in a God that was like it was like sci-fi. I was like, this is the coolest religion I've ever heard of. Like, you believe in that God is like on a star somewhere? I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
Teach me
Multiple
more.
multiple worlds.
Multiple worlds. And
Yeah.
I think it's well.
Well, only the men.
You know.
But okay, so your sun sign is like your ego.
Yes.
Your moon sign is kind of more like who you are.
Yeah, it's I feel. So think
I
of your sun
feel.
sign as I am. So I am a Libra, right? I am diplomatic. I am kind. I am, blah, blah, blah. Your moon sign's more I feel, or like actually use a verb. So I'm an Aries moon, right? So I love new things. Anything novel. That's my comfort zone. And taking care of myself, being by myself, totally good. That's why I could do the RV for 12 years. That's moon and Aries. That's very independent. It's very...
You're writing a book.
Just self-motive. It's just kind of and I don't like to be told what to do, per se. But, so that's your moon. And your moon, too, if you want to know if a person's kind of off.
But explain an Aries
depressed.
I feel. Because my daughter's actually, her sun sign is an Aries.
I feel excited. I feel thrilled. I feel like let's go right now.
Yeah.
It's very childlike. The Aries moon is super childlike. It's probably one of the emotional natures that's the most, it's great for creativity because it's and a lot of Aries moons are quite creative, playful, a little bit.
It's like Bobby.
Just like my daughter.
Sometimes they burn shit down on accident or get in car accidents or because we're a little bit thrill seeking, but Aries also, we have a hard time sometimes it's just like a child. I feel like I'm a 5-year-old child half the time emotionally. I'm just like a happy puppy dog. I'm like, oh, hi. And then when someone's mean to me, I'm like, what happened? Like, there's just almost an immaturity or that's not the right word. It's just childlike.
Yeah.
That emotional.
A naiveness.
It's a naivete. It is a naivete. When you move into your Mercury, then that's people's minds, how they communicate, how they think, how they process things, right? And if you have someone with a Mercury and Gemini, they tend to soft. Mercury, our good friend.
So you're
soft.
speaking like houses.
Yeah. Oh no,
Mercury
these are
house,
planets. Planets.
Oh,
planets.
okay.
And I'm just popping them into signs.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
with our 2 pillars, we're adding to the signs. We're adding planets.
Okay.
So with your Mercury, this is how does a person think? And this stuff's great for business charts, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to marketing and all these, your Venus and your Mercury can give you some really great clues about how to tweak stuff. If you have a disconnect with a person, it many times will be you could have their Mercury to your Neptune in the chart, make an exact aspect of some kind, which we'll move on to. That's our 4th pillar. But they make a geometrical connection where there's miscommunications or straight out lies or fantasizing, or do you know what I'm saying? There's some detachment from reality. So in a person's individual birth chart, you can see those planets, but you can also see it the way the 2 people kind of interact. Does this make sense? It's so hard for me to describe astrology or to explain things in a way that's concise.
No, you're doing great. I think we just keep bouncing from
I know
sign to moon to planet.
So Mercury, we're in planets. This is all planets.
This is all planets. Okay.
This is all planets. So sun is I am, moon is I feel, or you could use I and then use a verb. It's I cry, I thrill people,
Yeah.
Mercury is your mind. So it's the same. All of the planets, think of them as a verb. This is I think, I say, I explain, I process, Your Venus then shows you how a person, like I said, how you were it's your social nature. How do you behave? Do you play well with others? Or are you an asshole? You can kind of see that by a Venus. What do I value? Am I a person who likes to do I need to have around me physical security? Does that give me a sense of security? Or am I woo, free spirit? I don't care. So that's kind of all your sort of Venus-y stuff. And in my relationships with other people, what attracts me? What do I want?
That's the Venus.
That's your
So
Venus,
you can read all of this
What
when
makes
you
you
I'm
see
your
how they line
Venus.
up.
I'm your fire.
Venus can be a person's Venus. I mean, it can be the way a person manipulates you.
Is Venus really a female planet?
Well, I suppose.
Well, I mean, we
if
don't
you
like
think
to
about what
attach
is
gender
women-
anymore, but
what are women as a gender? The feminine is known for decorating itself, for affecting its behavior, for wearing makeup, for we're little tricksters.
we should say feminine
Right?
power.
Look at that beautiful lipstick
Yeah.
you have on, that bright, hot, beautiful, a bright lipstick. It's gorgeous. That's Venus. That's
Yeah.
Venus, right? Venus it has very much to do with being a flower to attract the bee and how a person does that. Mars, on the other hand, is how a person is the bee, I suppose. It's how a person goes after things. Are they an assertive, aggressive person? Are they more mellow?
Ooh.
do they have like, and there are many things with astrology too that we're not going to get into that kind of can show even things that have to do with a person's mental, wellness, and if they're psychopath or if they're not, or
You should start
all
a
kinds of
dating
stuff.
app.
For real.
I feel like there's already that pattern app is really a great app. I really like their interpretations. I think they're probably doing stuff like that. I'm just like,
You know, it's funny. My son's 21 and I love all the astrology stuff, obviously. My daughter does. My husband got into it. But my son, Josh, he's just like, are you guys talking about your signs again? And he just rolls his eyes and he's like, if I ever go on a date and she brings up the signs and any of her top questions, I'm out. And I'm like,
What is his sign?
I'm like immediately, what is
Yeah.
he's a Scorpio.
Bingo. Every time. My friend, who's an incredible, amazing astrologer, is a Scorpio.
Oh, yeah.
And he initially, in fact, there's another really well-known astrologer who's also Scorpio. But my friend Samuel, he initially totally skeptical, didn't like astrology. Like from what he told me, he was like, what about, but then he ended up becoming an astrologer and he's now like one of the best astrologers.
It's like the more you know, if you study it, and that's what I keep telling my son. I'm like, if you ever get like an itch to study this stuff, then you'll get it. But right now it's not his interest. So it's whatever.
I totally get it because people who are, I want to be the master of my ship. Like I'm going to say who I am. I do not think astrology, I don't approach astrology as a way of like trying to figure someone out and like
it's
put
like
them in a box.
Understanding
Just
each other.
Yeah, it's
Right.
just, okay, cool.
Like
Okay.
a deeper understanding and of yourself.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about the reading is like, I was just telling you,
what it's for is for you to study yourself.
understand yourself.
And
I
how
hear-
you receive yourself and how people receive you.
Yeah.
Perceive and receive, because that helps you with self-awareness, with
Yeah, for sure.
that's why
It's
I
just
love
a
astrology.
meditation on the ego, on the identity, you as a person. And I think with a lot of younger astrologers that are just kind of starting it, there's a lot of people out there. They do this thing where it's like they're trying to peg someone, no pun intended, but they're trying to like nail someone, like you're this, and this. And that's what I think probably your son was like, don't tell me
Who I am and what I want.
am. Yeah, exactly. Or what I want. Don't tell me what I want.
Yeah. So going back to Mars, does that fall in line with our third of the big three, your rising sign?
So your big three. So these are, the reason we see the big three is because a lot of apps and stuff, it's like an easy way to get people to astrology really quickly, right? And so
it tells you a lot in a little bit
really
with a little bit of, not a little bit of information, but
it's like, the
points.
person's outer kind of, it's the hook,
Right.
totally. Kind of a person's outer kind of personality, their inner needs, and how they present themselves. So I think of the ascendant as when a person walks into the door. So right now, Whitney, you're going to walk through that door. How do you do that? That's your ascendant. Mine's Leo. When I walk through a door, I'm like, hey, I'm here. I'm always like confident. I walk upright. I'm not like, that's just being a Leo.
That's a good way to think of it. Like how somebody presents themselves.
How do they
walk
enter new situations?
Okay.
So
and that's Mars?
This is your ascendant, but it's very
Your
much
rising.
also a person's Mars.
Okay.
So your rising sign is very much just think of this as my perception of you as you walk through the door. I see, fill in the blank with whatever the sign is on their ascendant. And you can then look at the sign's rulers. We haven't even talked about rulers with planets. We've been very I have not been organized with my explanations, but your planets also rule the signs. So each sign is ruled by a planet. So you get deeper information. Not only the fact that we've got an ascendant, but then we have a planet that is, it corresponds with the ascendant, and it's in a house. And so it gives you even more information. So there's layers and layers and layers.
Lots of layers.
Layers. So then that comes to our houses. So the ascendant, what the ascendant is, it's just what was rising, what was on the eastern horizon right at that moment. It's like right now, the sun, it's afternoon, so the sun's over here, eastern horizon, the sun is not there. I can't see anything. There may be planets there. I have no idea. But so when a person has planets rising on the left side of their chart, which is the eastern side of the chart, that side of the chart, the bottom half, if we were to go into houses, is more of to give a little more depth. The bottom of your birth chart is very personal, right? It's like the first 3 houses have very much to do with how you personally do things, what you hold on to and own and value, how you communicate, and what home looks like for you. So it's very personal. And then it moves out into kind of the 5th house and 6th house would have a bit more to do with like when you're a kid and you go to school for the first time and you have your name's on your backpack and you have an identity now. It's not just you at home, but it's now you at school and out in the world expressing yourself. And then Virgo, which has to do with, and you got to go home, do homework and like do chores. But it's also where you perfect yourself and where you polish yourself. So on and so forth. So the upper part of the chart, it's actually called the southern. This part of the chart shows us a person's relationship to other people, starting with Libra. So how do I relate with others, right? In Libra, that's your 7th house. How do I deal with like shared joint resources with others? That's like 8th house. It's like 2nd house is like my money. 8th house is like your money. So when you're married, that has to do with not only your money, but sex and divorce and like all the big heavy hitters, right? Like your garbage or your baggage, your issues, etc. that I have apparently subscribed to. That's 8th house. 9th house then kind of moves beyond that into higher education. If 3rd house is just you and your brain and how you think and you as a student, 9th house then is like going off to college or traveling the world, going away from your comfort zone to learn something new, you know?
Which are opposing, right?
Yeah. All the houses,
okay.
Which makes it so fun. Learning the oppositions and the basics of there's these 6 archetypal ideas. And then it has its 6 opposites, right? Whether it's houses, signs, even the planets. I use a traditional, the modern planets. And I also use a couple asteroids that no one else really uses, but I do. So, and the point is it's 12, 12, 12. I use 12 aspects. I use 6 aspects that are moving away, 6 aspects that are coming close, to keep it very simple. And that's part of what my book's about. So
yeah, tell us about your book that you're writing real quick.
Well, so initially with the book, I started out as an art book. So I wanted to do a cool book that told the story, like the metaphor of the zodiac. It started with Aries, but told it through the perspective of like the particle of light, starting on Aries and then like its whole journey through the universe. And like, anyway, so it's kind of morphed and changed, but right now it's basically a book of poetry and prose, exposition, where I write about astrology and explain the things kind of we're talking about in a more concise way. I just feel like there's so many books out there right now and there's so much stuff about astrology. I want to do something that was a bit more exciting and creative. So being a Libra, I love visuals. And so it's got my own artwork. It's got artwork in it that is just things that I found and put together and that show visually. I can't even talk about it. It's like trying to describe
astrology.
A picture.
It's like when you're talking about a chart and houses and planets and it makes sense when you see a chart. We should have printed off a chart to give an example. Yeah. Maybe we can include it in the description. We'll pop in a chart so people understand.
Because a lot of people are, with all this information, are visual learners.
It makes more sense when you see it visually. It's very few people can probably follow it. But it's like, it is art. And I feel like our life, our journey through our soul, its journey through this life is art. Like, everything we're taking in, experiencing and learning. And I think that's a beautiful way. I don't think you should stop the book. I love the idea of that being like the poetry, the art, the visuals. Because I personally, I haven't like sought out a bunch of astrology books, but I have a few. But I haven't seen anything like advertised
to be
like
a bit
that.
More like a coffee table book, like a book with really beautiful imagery. That's
I love a good coffee table book, like a big one.
Yeah, like where you're going through it. It's very colorful and visual, and it's showing you in a way that a picture speaks 1,000 words, right? So I love this idea of it's like a hodgepodge of all of these different creative themes. But here's Aries and here's Taurus, and it leads you through nature and a bunch of stuff. So
that's amazing because you could flip it open and display the art, and then have and then you change it every day.
Colorful and beautiful. Yeah, sure.
And learn something new every day, depending on what page you're on. I love it. That's cool.
And I think even if you're not into this idea that there's some causal relationship between the stars and us, that's fine. Studying these archetypes just as simple, basic. They're an important part. They're in art. They're in the Bible. There's tons of astrology in the Bible. Tons. Like I was reading the book of Revelation. I was like, well, I know what that means now. I now know what sealed versus unsealed means because that was sealed to me before. And then once it's unsealed, you know what it is, even if other people don't, So astrology helps unseal things.
See, now you're opening up all these other questions I haven't, for sake of time.
But wait, we've only gotten to We just did houses.
Aspects, our last one.
Aspects.
We didn't even go through all the houses. Okay, so the rest of the house is really fast. Just the 10th house has to do with the outer world. If the 4th house is like home and your family and your private world, that's public world, right?
Okay.
Private life, public life.
It's always opposition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And personal to more, it starts out very personal, like literally first house is your body. You know, it's like you. Here you are. And then it spirals out from you. So 11th house is friendships. And it's like the marketplace when you go out and you're just out in public and there's random people walking around in the neighborhood or whatever. And it does have to do with the future. It has to do with what are we doing together as a community? You know, there's bigger narratives that have to do with all of us. And so people who are Aquarius friends are really, many times really important to Aquariuses. And then the last one is your 12th house, which is where things are ending. And they traditionally called it the house of self-undoing because planets that land there are kind of in our blind spot. Like a lot of times you don't realize I have Saturn there. I'm like horrible at adulting sometimes, you know? But it kind of, you've got a lot of planets in your 12th house, right? So many times we're like going through life trying to figure out when your sun is there. It's like, who am I? You know, exactly. And like we can kind of morph and try on different versions of ourselves. But then really there comes a spiritual crisis where it's like, no. I know who I am, especially as Aquarius. This is who I am. And getting comfortable with like, does that make sense with your own self and not shooting your own self in the foot? You know how sometimes we're our own worst enemy.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like you said, it's like everything kind of coming to an ending. If you think about life at the end of like towards the end of your life, you've lived, you have a lot to look back on. You've learned a lot about yourself and things make more sense to you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I've always said that it seems like the planets in the 12th house. I can't remember if you have any in the 12th. Do you know if you do?
I can't remember either.
I think that there are things that though you figure out, you kind of get more comfortable with them as you get older. Mm-hmm. And as you do, or if you have a crisis of some kind, like Solve just had something where you faced your own death. It's kind of like those 12th house things then are no longer as scary and you don't have to deny those parts of yourself anymore. And you can kind of just like pull them out and look at them. Yeah. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So aspects are the last. That's the last. And it's just, I'm not going to go into all the aspects. Basically, you have some aspects that just naturally flow. It's just like music, you guys, right? So
where those are on the chart?
So you're traditionally like your good aspects are like a trine. Oh, we're all air signs. We're all chatting with each other. But you could also have people that were all together. We could have like some funky little yacht or something, or some other thing. But it just shows the way that the energy flows between the two planets. It depends on if it's a sun and a sun or a sun and a Mercury. Like it just depends on what we're talking about here, but it's how they relate to each other. Okay. So sometimes they relate really easily, but depending on what the planet even is, if it's like Mercury has to do with communication, if it's like in air signs and there's nice grand trines, it's like easy flow of communication, maybe too much communication. And then you have some aspects that are more challenging. Like they always say an opposition is like an aspect that's a challenging one. I think oppositions many times, so like Libra, if you're with an Aries, or they show us things, they see us, and many times we'll see them in ways that other people can't. Yeah. And it can be a good thing. It can be very attractive, but it can also be like really potent fuel for growth because you have to see stuff in yourself that you don't want to have to see. So that's kind of a harder aspect. You could have a T-square to someone, and depending on which kind, if it's an approaching or a separating T-square, they're kind of different, dealing with different things. One sort of has to do a bit more with your unconscious emotional material that maybe comes up with this person. And the other has a bit more to do with, it's like private and public stuff. I don't know how to
so these are all things on your chart because you've kind of lost me a little bit.
No, totally. I'm going into technical stuff right now that I know.
Just because I don't know all of them.
Well,
I don't know
aspects are definitely the thing that take the most time to learn.
Okay.
Because, but if you were to think of the aspects, I always, like I said, everything corresponds. The sign. So know those 12 signs because the planets correspond. Aries, Mars, they correspond. Right. Aries, Mars, first house, they correspond. Aries, Mars, first house, a conjunction. Okay. All similar.
So is it something?
Conjunction, two planets together. It's just like Aries. It's just they're together. They're starting out. There's much more detail, like one that's approaching, one that's separating. And that's stuff that an astrologer looks at and can kind of like interpret. But
because it's always moving.
Yeah.
Right.
And is an aspect like when a client is asking you a specific question, like, okay, I'm struggling with this thing or this thing happened. Is that where you see it lines up and that's the aspect?
Yes.
Okay.
An aspect is really just, if we had a chart here, it's like, it's geometry. So it's just like, you got a planet here, you got a planet here. Let's say that if they're within a degree of arc to each other, not a degree, but like 0 degrees or 1 degree or 5 degrees or 10 degrees, they're conjunct each other. They're by each other on this side of the chart together. Or if you had a planet here and a planet here, they're opposites, 180 degrees, right? 180 degrees to about 270 or so. Or not 270, what am I saying? 180 degrees, your opposition. So it's geometry. And it's just really, another thing is there's many different apps and sites to look at charts, and they look different. So getting used to reading different types of charts can be, if you can just go one place. Astro.com is my favorite. So I highly recommend free.
Astro?
Astro.com. And you can create an account and have your own, like up to 1,000 charts for free. So it's a great resource. And they have all different ways of setting up your charts in both Western and Vedic astrology. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, where can people find you? Where can our listeners find you?
So, yes. So Instagram probably right now. I have built a few websites and took them down. And right now I've been writing my book. So I haven't really been taking that many clients, just if they come to me. So Instagram, it's Nicole Huntsman. We could probably just put it on
we'll put it on our little details.
Yeah. I haven't done readings in a couple months since I've been here. So I would absolutely love to do something.
Yeah. Well, Whitney and I are definitely going to come in for a reading because I'm sure a lot has changed in the last few years.
We should just recreate the night at Connie's, but just with Connie and I.
But just with us too. We're going to get selfish about it.
Well, it'll be Connie and I and Wild Rose Beauty.
Yeah. Let's do it. Because obviously there's so many layers and so many aspects to astrology. It's fascinating to me and I love learning new things. And I always learn something new and I'm with you. And today was like a lot. I think my brain is like,
helpful at all. I feel like I always am a fire hose.
I know. But before we completely wrap up, because I'm the one that has a time constraint today. I'm sorry. We have 4 minutes. In 1 or 2 minutes, without going,
off the rails.
Off the rails or political.
Tributaries.
Like just give, because I feel like in general, the world has been heavy and every healer says this, that they need all the healers to send light and love right now. So do you, in your forecasting, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Like what do you see?
But that's not astrology. That's just my common sense.
I know, but like
the astrology, honestly,
what is the astrology right now in the world?
See, I don't do that. I don't go pull charts.
You don't
do transits like these astrologers who are like, this is what's happening for everyone because it's different. United States, things happen in the United States. The things that people in the West are seeing on the internet, but it's different than people if you lived in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa.
So that's not really a question you can answer.
I mean, I honestly feel like transits, even I hardly look at my own transits. I just feel like it's silly. I'd rather go out and live life. I don't use astrology to like try to manipulate the world around me. I use it to try to understand and just to see, again, it's a poetic, it's just a different way of experiencing existence, right?
Okay, so then last question. Everyone loves to post about retrogrades.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Mercury happens 3 times a year, so they're just always, it's just part of the marketing cycle. It's just these companies that are just putting their astrology shit up there and they're like, well, Mercury happens 3 times a year. So, and all the planets, station retrograde at some point.
Do they? That was my question. Is all do? Okay.
Yeah.
Even Earth?
Well, no, not Earth, because everything's looking from perspective. It's all just it's an illusion. It's like when you're on the freeway and a car passes you, you're both going like 65, 70 miles an hour, but they're just going a little faster and you're slowing down and it looks like you're going backwards.
Yeah. Okay. That's the perfect way to explain it. Yeah.
So it's an illusion.
It's an illusion. Yeah. All planets are always moving forward. It's an illusion. That's the point. That's why retrogrades.
That's why it feels impactful because you're like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah. You feel the shift of
I feel a sense many times with retrogrades in general of something slowing down for a second, taking a break or pause. There's like a weird pause thing and then like starting again. I've noticed with mundane world events that like with COVID-19, for example, there were some very important points like degrees, like in Capricorn for Pluto, for example, that was at a degree with the system I use. A woman wearing a mask made of butterfly wings. And that was where Pluto was at during COVID-19. Like this oracular phrase that comes from a totally different system. Point is, so that stuck with me, that degree. And then I started seeing in other charts, political charts and charts of different leaders tied to COVID and just where I'm like, okay, I see what's going on here. So point is retrogrades, because I just happened to notice that because it was a retrograde and it's like stuck in my brain. So, but retrogrades really,
And that's a pretty like definite symbol.
It's just a normal
Yeah.
part of life. Like
Yeah.
everything's always ebbing and flowing. And so sometimes it's just time to take a step back. Depends on the planet.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, I just feel like we're going to have to, we'll get questions from our listeners and we'll have you back on. And maybe we can do like a live reading for
That'd be
someone.
really fun.
We'll do something fun like that.
People, I don't know if do people ever call in to do little?
No, well, we could make it happen. We could
That'd be really fun.
could put out a contest for a guest to come in and get a reading or
That'd be
something.
awesome.
Yeah.
I would love
Yeah.
it. I would love it.
That would be really
Hey,
fun.
well, thank you
Go ahead.
so much for coming, Nicole.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to do my next reading with you.
I can't wait either. It's going to be a good, fun night.
Sorry, I'm on a time constraint today, but we love you and you're brilliant. And thank you for taking the time. And thank you to all of our listeners. We love you. Please like and share our podcast with your family and friends. You can find Nichole at Nicole Huntsman on Instagram. And hopefully we get to see her beautiful book coming out soon. So thank you so much for tuning in. And don't forget, be you, stay wild.
Yay Networks.